Franz and Teresa Kraus were not names known to many beyond their small neighborhood in Crestwood Court. They were elderly, quiet immigrants from Europe. Franz was born in Yugoslavia and had once been a prisoner of war in a Soviet camp. Meanwhile, Teresa had been born in Germany. The pair shared a quiet, comfortable life together, only hampered by the fact that their 45-year-old son, Lorenz, never quite made anything of himself. To neighbors, the three seemed like a peculiar but harmless family. They were reclusive, never really stepping outside of their comfort zone, but always seeming content. And then, sometime around 2017, Franz and Teresa simply disappeared. There was no police report, no missing persons bulletin, no public concern. Lorenz was still residing at the same home, going about his life as if nothing had happened. Neighbors who asked about his parents' absence, of which there were very few, were told that they moved back to Germany to live out their remaining years, and for the most part, that satisfied them. It was a quiet disappearance, and for years, no one questioned it. But the government did. Long after the couple was last seen, Social Security checks in their names continued to arrive at the residence, and were quickly cashed. The money meant for Franz and Teresa was being used, despite their disappearance, which caught the attention of federal investigators. By 2025, an investigation into who was cashing their checks was opened, with investigators believing that some fraud was being committed by their son. He was the only one living at their old address. He was the only one in contact with his parents, and it seemed that he was the only party who could be stealing the funds. On September 23, 2025, a search warrant was served at the Crestwood Court home where their son still lived, the same house where the couple had last been seen alive 8 years earlier. It was there, behind the home, that police made the first horrifying discovery. 2 sets of human remains were unearthed during a search of the property. The remains were found buried just feet apart. Identification was pending, but few doubted whose bones they actually were. The investigation was now a homicide inquiry, and so everyone's attention turned towards the son who still lived at the home. Yet, before police could fully question him, Lorenz Kraus came forward on his own terms, and in a surreal twist, contacted multiple news outlets, writing each a 2-page email in which he admitted to burying his parents in the yard. The email also included his phone number, which Stone Grissom, WRGB's news director, immediately called. Grissom told Kraus that he would post the 2-page statement to the station's website, but only if he came into the studio for an interview. It was there that Lorenz confessed to murdering his parents. So, welcome back to another episode of Dreading, or if this is your first time here, welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the confession of Lorenz Kraus, the man who spontaneously sat down for an interview with CBS 6 Albany and confessed to the murder of his parents. In the past month since this has occurred, we have received at least 10 emails and comments a day, asking us to cover the confession. And after reviewing the footage and going over all the news coverage surrounding the case, it's clear to see why. This interview is deeply unsettling, and the fact that it was so freely given is odd. But here we are. As always, if there's a case you would like to see on the channel or a story you want to bring more attention to, you can let me know by emailing me at dreading.official@gmail.com. We're still going through the email daily and adding your suggestions to our list of topics. But be aware, because we are just 2 people, it will take us some time. Also, I'm recording this in the same day as another video, so if you still hear the cows mooing in the background, they've been going all day. I have no idea why. But with all of that said, let us begin. The following information is accurate as of November 2025, at time of writing. Unfortunately, there is very little known about Franz and Teresa, but their son has a small but notable history according to the Times-Union article, Lorenz Kraus's Dark Journey from Valedictorian to Confessed Killer. It should be clarified that he was never a valedictorian. He only said as much publicly because he wanted to seem smarter than he actually was. According to the article, Lorenz Kraus appeared on the New Hampshire presidential ballot running as a Democrat. He announced that his goal in running for president was to dissolve the presidency itself. Beneath that headline-grabbing statement was a manifesto that read like a conspiracy-laden piece of propaganda. Kraus proposed dividing the United States into 4 separate regions, claiming this would break the control of the deep state, British agents, Rhodes Scholars, and, of course, the Jews. Oh boy. Okay, unfortunately, his campaign website, banjews.com, made the message explicit. According to a profile published by Temple University's Klein College of Media and Communication, the site was littered with clip art diagrams and pseudo-academic charts linking Jewish people to global conspiracies. On that site, Kraus blamed Jewish organizations for September 11th, classic, and outlined what he called the, quote, 7 benefits of a declaration of war on the Jews. Those who were aware of Kraus avoided him as much as possible. Surprise, surprise. He was described as being odd and off-putting, which makes sense given everything we have already established. Based on his political campaign, his Facebook posts, and general statements, Lorenz seemed to believe that he was all around better than those around him, that he alone saw the world for what it was and could effectively change the world for the better. But he was wrong. We're about to go over the two-page statement that was initially sent out by Lorenz, but before we do that, we have to put a small disclaimer up. We, of course, do not endorse anything he says therein, or agree with any of the points made. We are reading this because it gives insight into his mental state, which we feel is important to understanding how and why crimes like this occur. So the following is the two-page letter that Kraus wrote into various news outlets after the bodies were found in his backyard. To everyone who is suffering in this world, Arnold Schwarzenegger teaches that we should make yourself useful. I am open to talking with all YouTubers that I can since they can present conversations over sound bites. I invented a brain-saver medical device concept while at RPI. It is designed to oxygenate the brain in case of drowning or smoke inhalation. I won a $1,000 entrepreneurship prize for it. President Shirley Ann Jackson was fond of noting it in her many speeches. Pausing to note a few things about this. Firstly, is that it would be wholeheartedly inappropriate for YouTubers to engage with Lorenz specifically. And secondly, he states that this device is just a concept, meaning that he basically had this cool idea for something, then never did anything with it. We looked into if any moves were made to make the brain saver real, but what we found were a few AI projects with the same name, and an X-ray protection surgical cap. There's no evidence at the time of writing if this idea ever came to fruition, or that he ever made moves to turn the brain saver from concept to creation, but his childlike pride over winning $1,000 over a cool idea is pretty notable. This is for some reason the first thing he brings up about himself, something that he wants people to know about before anything else. So he's uniquely proud of this, which does feel strange because upon inspection, he never made this. He just had an idea and people said, yeah, that would be cool. It's like if you won a prize for saying you want to make a device that cures cancer, that would be wonderful, but you didn't make it. And given that he is 53 years old, he should know that. I feel like it's really important that he knows that. We can assess from this small portion of the document that Lorenz thinks very highly of himself. He wants to make grand public statements because he knows that he is about to get a certain degree of public attention for his parents' murders. He wants to emphasize how brilliant he is. But unfortunately, his first piece of evidence that he shows to illustrate that fact does the opposite. Any rational adult can see that, which is indicative of him having some delusions of grandeur. He believes that people will view this as a massive accomplishment, that he is on the same level as a doctor or a dentist. Or a scientist. That's what I meant, scientist. But you know what, dentists are important too, manage a lot of pain. But let us continue. I solved the problem of universals. Philosophers will know what that means. I invented a private cash device called Panobo, managed by Pinda Technology Inc. It is a cash solution to the dangers of central bank digital currencies. Pausing once again, we looked into what Panobo is, and this is the website. We did not click on any of the links on the site because I felt due to how poorly it is made and laid out, I was going to get my data stolen. However, we did go to the certificate tab of the website, where it states that Lorenz, rather than being the inventor of Panobo, is merely a lead investor, and that he made the website himself. It's kind of cool. So this is the kind of work he puts out, which leaves a lot to be desired. And if I had a sponsorship with Squarespace or whatever other website building platform, I'd probably use it now. Again, it's notable how Lorenz speaks about Panobo versus what it actually is. In his mind, because he made it, it's a solution to a massive problem. He sees himself as a genius entrepreneur and developer, fixing problems that most people don't even realize exist. But he continues, everyone has a stake in this and more. The most important law in America is the NYS Ratification Law, 1788. It teaches that the people may resume the powers of government whenever it is necessary to their happiness. Number 1. Our happiness is law. Number 2. The law is what is best for the community. And number 3. Is it best for the community to have our government in the hands of domestic enemies? No. This is why we need a board of trustees to assure self-government, as well as the law and quality of life. With this law, we can have irregular constitutional change with after-the-fact public support, as Jefferson taught. On the basis of law, I declare the creation of the Board of Trustees of New York and one for the federal government. I am the initial trustee of both. Great. But he's on the Board of Trustees for New York and the federal government, so he's in charge of everything, so he cannot be found guilty of murder. I guess this video is over. Subscribe to our Patreon if you like the content. Just kidding, the video continues. But we're now stumbling into a pretty pressing issue, and that is the fact that Lorenz believes somehow he has the knowledge to save America. What we begin to see here is a dangerous psychology of self-anointed saviors, men who start with ideas that sound like attempts at reform but gradually devolve into grand illusions of world-changing importance. He believes that his own political ideals and notions are so revolutionary that he should be placed in charge of all the decision-making. Lorenz's written statement reveals a man who no longer sees himself as a participant in society, but as the only one capable of rescuing it. He positions himself as the singular voice of reason in a nation he believes has gone mad. This kind of thinking is not new, nor is it unique to Lorenz. It's the same mindset that fueled figures like Nathan Larson, whose own manifesto reads like the ravings of a man trapped inside of an echo chamber of his own creation. For those unfamiliar, Larson was an internet figure who gained brief notoriety for running for public office on a platform of openly advocating for child abuse, and later acting on those same beliefs by kidnapping a minor he groomed online. He lived entirely in digital shadows, surrounded by people who mirrored his sickness. His, quote, support network was an illusion of forum posts and usernames, and his ideology became a substitute for a genuine human connection. Because there was no one to tether him to reality, they became swept up in grand illusions about themselves. They are simply unique and better than those around them. If you're interested in our coverage of Nathan, I will place a video we made on him in the description box down below. Lorenz's delusion presents itself through the belief in his intellectual superiority. He sincerely believes he's been chosen by fate to fix the broken machine of modern civilization. It seems that Lorenz's focus is on how to improve the world from his point of view, which can be a noble pursuit, but because he is so detached from society and then reality, he's under the firm belief that only he has the power to fix everything. That everyone else is either too stupid or too corrupt to make the changes that he would make. It's a fairly narcissistic perspective, and one that often leads down a path of death and destruction. When someone starts believing that only they have the power to save the world, the next logical leap is that all of their actions, no matter how depraved, are justified. If you truly believe that everyone else is too stupid or too corrupt to fix what is broken, then any action you take, no matter how extreme, becomes righteous in your own mind. He continues, I must note that a domestic enemy is an oath-bound officer or official who betrays our sovereignty to the British and their colony Israel. All Zionist politicians are domestic enemies. By this, we attain a national repudiation of Zionism, which the public desperately needs and increasingly wants. We need a board of trustees to save our country and restore our sovereignty. Rhodes Scholars are domestic enemies. Kathleen Hochul aided and abetted an enemy into high office. Rhodes Scholar Delgado. This makes the governor a domestic enemy. Her privilege to hold office is void, as are the senators who approved this nomination, as is that of Letitia James. I don't know why Donald Trump can't say that. Could have gotten out of his problems a long time ago, but he wants attention. Unfortunately, Donald Trump said it sounds good for the U.S. to fall under the British Empire. By this, Donald Trump repudiated his oath of office by repudiating our form of government, as well as our Constitution and our sovereignty. Repudiation is resignation. Elon Musk's son was right. Trump is not the president. His military orders are illegal. Trump did not prove that politics is negotiable. Everything runs on money. Churches, corporations, and colleges. They will dance to Trump's tune for money. I would like to get Trump back on the right track. First, he must be rehabilitated. Without that, his oath of office is void. Justice Roberts is a domestic enemy for giving the oath to Trump, knowing he was found to be a domestic enemy in Colorado courts. Domestic enemy budgets are legal budgets, and the bonds produced are legal bonds. Poison bonds. This violates securities law for all who trade U.S. debt. This is why you need a board of trustees to clean up the crisis. The board of trustees will have prosecutorial immunity. In return, I will answer all questions in this police manner. I would like to thank the investigators for their patience and abilities. Okay, so pausing once again to state that this was the main crux of what he wanted. All the political ramblings and statements were all meant to justify the fact that he believes he should be given prosecutorial immunity. His goal is to convince the general public that he is their savior, and that he alone has the know-how and ability to look at the system and fix it. And the cost of him doing that is the public ignoring that he killed his parents and buried them in his backyard. He frames this almost as a favor to the public and the police. That we would hear that he won an award one time and made a non-functioning website that looked so terrible that no one would ever use it, and let him off the hook for parenticide. That kind of logic doesn't exist in the realm of reason. It sits between narcissism and delusion, as Lorenz's self-image has become so inflated, so detached from consequence that he no longer perceives guilt as real. To him, this is just a misunderstanding. One that most people would understand if they simply listened to him, the smartest guy in the whole wide world. It's not hard to interpret this as a break from reality, at least on some level. However, while Lorenz's behavior appears delusional on the surface, it doesn't necessarily indicate that he's detached from reality in the clinical sense. A break from reality in psychological terms usually implies a person can no longer distinguish between what's real and what isn't. He understands what's real. However, he's interpreting the world and his actions through the warped lens of his own ego. So, while his behavior may look delusional, it's actually the logical endpoint of his personality structure. He isn't broken from reality, but he's attempting to bend it to his will. Extreme narcissists like Lorenz often build an internal logic that is perfectly consistent within itself. However, it just doesn't align with the rest of the world. But alas, he unfortunately continues. When the public is in favor of a board of trustees, for the right reason of protecting our sovereignty, the board of trustees will pay everyone in support $4,000. Great. If we hand over political power to this guy, he's going to pay us $4,000. That would be so helpful. So never mind everything else that I said. He continues, I'm making myself useful for the right reasons. As long as I am innocent until proven guilty, I am fit for office. If the public doesn't want a board of trustees, I would like to be prosecuted under German law, Wehrgild law. Blacks would get a better deal under this kind of law than British law. Muslims and Jews have their special cutouts too. Okay, so pausing again, I had to look up what Wehrgild law is. If I'm pronouncing that correctly, who knows? But it's an ancient law concept that translates to man price or blood money. It stems around the idea that there is a general price for everything, including someone's life. So, say if one person killed or injured another, instead of facing imprisonment or execution, they would pay a set amount of silver or gold to the victim's family. At the time it was used, early tribal societies lacked centralized governments or police forces, so blood feuds between families could spiral endlessly. One family would kill the other remaining members of the family would plan to kill the rest of the family, and so on. But if the offending family was forced to pay an amount equal to the price of the members that were slain, it was thought to stop the cycle of violence and revenge. Wehrgild law hasn't been used since the 12th century, but Lorenz, ever so brilliant, thinks that he can pick and choose his own consequences. He continues, I recoil at the thought of being prosecuted by a German-hating regime by a German-hating judge. My true peers are family, friends, and fellow Volkssavers, and good Germans who understand the concept of doing one's duty, and those who have experience with Wehrgild law. This might require a special law to accept, but we don't have a governor or state legislator to pass it. Every elected official has a duty to object to Rhodes Scholars or Zionists in government. America needs a board of trustees, and I know what to do. This is why I am the initial trustee. I have paintings to sell to support the families I support in the Philippines. Each painting is $454,000. I agree to profit by nothing except minimal living expenses. Please care for Analana Arnaez and our Pinda.ph and Panobo Biz team. They can accept high-interest loans repaid in Panobo. You will find her on Facebook. Sincerely, Lorenz Kraus. What is this, Carmen Sandiego? What are the Philippines? Why are we going to the Philippines? Okay, so that was his statement, but the following day he would make his way to the news studio and would sit down with reporter Craig Floyd to talk about the bodies being found in his backyard. Something that is important to note before we start watching the footage is the fact that every other time we have covered an interview of this sort, it has been done by a trained interrogator. They may have been poorly trained or have done their jobs terribly, but at the very least, they make their money sitting across from criminals and have a general idea of how it should be done. That is not the case here, so we'll see how this goes.
All right, Lawrence, well, thanks for sitting down with us. We really appreciate it. We'll get to the statement, but first we want to talk about the more recent event, actually the prior events and now the more recent events. Take me back to the summer of 2017. What happened to your parents?
Already, Chris is doing a phenomenal job. He talks to Lorenz with a certain degree of respect, which caters to his ego. Lorenz wanted to go to the news station to talk about his statement, how he should be put in charge of the nation's board of trustees, or whatever the fuck. But Craig is able to immediately pivot the conversation to being about his parents. He does so in a way that is so professional and courteous that it would be hard for Lorenz to become defensive. Even though this isn't what he came here to talk about, he is more likely to talk about his parents' deaths because Craig is treating him like an equal, instead of the ridiculous Ben Franklin lookalike that he is.
My mother wrote me a note, which the police must have now, describing her walking across Whitehall Road, not Whitehall, Wolf Road, and she fell down on her face. And she had, when I saw her a week or so later, yellow and green, black and blue marks from this. And she wrote that down, and that was a situation that became a problem because when elderly start to fall down, the time comes that they start to, beginning of the end. And my father also had cataract surgery, and he lost his vision to double vision, so he couldn't be he couldn't drive. So they were losing their independence and so forth. And my mother had a brother who had Alzheimer's, and my father had a sister who had Alzheimer's. They were both in nursing homes. My mother had a second sister who also had Alzheimer's. And, they put you in a bed, they put catheters into you, they rip your teeth out to try to keep you, the whole 9 yards. So this is in the back of my mind.
Pausing here as Craig interjects to keep the interview going. Had this been a police interview, they should have let the silence hang there for a bit, just to see if he would continue with his thoughts, or to increase the psychological pressure on Lorenz. But let's review what this sockless buffoon has just said. When asked about his parents' actions in 2017, when they were last seen, he brings up how his mother had fallen while on a walk. This, alongside the fact that his father had recently had cataract surgery and no longer could drive, indicated to Lorenz that their health and overall well-being was in stark decline. He viewed them having relatively small health problems as being the beginning of the end, and goes on to describe how each of them had siblings that went into nursing homes and required a certain amount of care. He frames nursing homes as if they are torture chambers, and shows quite a bit of visible disgust when talking about them. If we were to follow his line of logic, he means to say that his parents' apparently poor health and loss of independence in their old age was the motivation behind the murders, that he was putting them out of their misery like a bird, and almost being charitable by killing them, burying them in the backyard and cashing their checks. But it's notable that even in his retelling, his parents seemed to be in fine health. Sure, his mother had fallen and given herself a few black eyes, but she was still mobile and active. She wasn't housebound, unable to take care of herself. Meanwhile, his father had had surgery on his eyes and could no longer drive, but overall was generally well. Neighbors and records suggest the couple retained a degree of independence. They weren't bedridden, housebound, or incapable of self-care in the way Lorenz would have you believe. The discrepancy matters because it exposes a choice in interpretation. Ordinary aging can be read as dignified vulnerability or as intolerable weakness, depending upon who is doing the reading. Lorenz chooses the latter, and that choice tells you more about him than them. The only thing that stands out is the fact that at their age, they might have needed more help from their 45-year-old son who still lived with them. Maybe they had asked him to take more active roles in the home, driving his father to appointments or just taking care of the house. They didn't require care per se, but they just needed help with some tasks every now and then. When a 45-year-old adult, Ben Franklin IRL, is still living at home and becomes the primary helper for his aging parents, the dynamic flips. Tasks that once fell onto the older generation are now rooted to the child, and one would hope that someone nearly 50 would be reliable, or something. But that was too much for Lorenz. He viewed them relying on him, possibly for the first time in his entire life, as them being helpless and pathetic. And that was enough for him to take their lives, it seems. He casts nursing homes as grotesque institutions, and in doing so, frames his act as a merciful alternative to that fate. He's genuinely trying to state that he is a good guy for killing his parents before things got worse for them, that helping them take care of their daily lives, getting them a live-in nurse, or putting them in a care home would be less preferable to their death at his hands. But there is something else that's interesting about Lorenz, and that's how lame he is. I don't mean that to be cruel. Rather, this is a man who wants to be placed on the Board of Trustees for America and New York. He wants all decision-making to be run through him, because he is the only one brilliant enough to think of some real solutions. And yet, when he was given access to the biggest platform that he could get, he showed up looking like just some guy who went on a run. Like just some runner who didn't know he was going to be interviewed this day. But this is how he presented himself and what he wore to tell the American people to give him control of the government. You know what, sure, give this guy emergency powers like he is the fucking Senate, and maybe he'll strike up a solid trade relationship with the Naboo. How about that?
So you didn't want to see them deteriorate and go through that, did you?
And I'll mention, the police know about my sister and having to see my sister die from cancer. I was 16, she was 14. Go through 9 months or so of, the agony of a cancer patient.
So did you kill your parents You can be honest with us.
I know. I'll leave that for the statement that I put on your website.
The
But
statement doesn't mention that.
I know,
The
I know,
statement
I know.
does not mention that.
Right.
I want to hear from you.
Yeah.
What did you do to your parents?
I buried them in their property.
You buried them in the backyard of that house in Albany.
Right.
At what point did they become deceased?
I need to see a calendar to sometime August 2017.
And did they die at your hand? That's the question.
Right. I'll have to leave it for that statement.
But that's not in the statement. And I think it's important for people to know what happened to your parents.
Right.
They were your parents. You loved them. They were deteriorating. What did you do?
I will.
Don't tell me you're going to leave it to the statement, because it's not in the statement. What did you do to your parents?
So Lorenz wants to talk. He's excited to have this platform, as evidenced by the sly, shitty little smile he has on his face every time he starts a sentence. And that's why this sort of pressure being put on him works. If he was genuinely trying to avoid talking about his parents' deaths, and his role in that, he would have stopped the conversation the moment it was brought up, and refused to speak about anything besides his written statement. Had this been a normal police interview, the interviewer drilling him this way would not have been nearly as effective. But Lorenz's ego is telling him that he's in total control. He believes the general public is watching him speak with rapt attention, and agreeing that his mother falling over once was reason enough to murder her. Yeah, Lorenz, this is great. In his mind, the interviewer could not possibly get him to say or do anything that would make him look bad because he's so much smarter than they are.
My goal is for the American people to recognize that there's 40 million boomers. They're all going to go through the same kind of problems. It affects all of us, and we need to widen up the law so that people can deal with these kind of problems in a humane way, in a whatever way that people can deal with. And I did my duty to my parents.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say that it's not humane to murder the elderly. Pretty wild take, I know. But that is not you doing, quote, your duty to your parents. That is you deciding that the elderly have no quality of life and murdering them so you won't have to help them in any real material way. The way he frames this is so sinister, because he's attempting to claim that what he did is a reasonable solution, one that adults should consider as their parents' age.
So you ended their lives.
I won't
You're
admit
saying,
it.
you're saying that without actually saying that word. I want to hear you say that word. You
Yes.
ended their lives
I have to
give them mercy, you're saying.
plead my Fifth Amendment rights until I can disclose it with my statement there.
Did you have any concern that whatever you did was wrong?
I would never have done such a thing if I ever did it knowing it's wrong.
So you believe what you did was right. You believe taking your parents' lives was the right thing to do for their sake.
If I did it, absolutely that.
But you did do it. You're saying to us that you did it.
There's a statement there that we'll deal with more later.
Something we've noted when we've covered narcissists in the past is that they tend to believe they are smarter than they actually are. They believe that when they speak, most people simply agree with them, and that if they are given a large enough platform, people should support them. But when people actually listen to them, the opposite tends to be true, so much so that people wonder if the person is mentally all there. Lorenz is trying to speak in riddles here, because he doesn't want to outright admit he murdered his parents, even though he has already admitted that fact. By admitting to burying them in their lawn, and stating that he did what needed to be done to honor them, he is admitting that he took their lives. There is no other way that statement can be interpreted. Moreover, he was the only person with the means and motive to have ended their lives. He believes that he is preserving his innocence in this interview, even though he had already admitted to the murders, and is incorrectly trying to double-talk his way through this.
If you want to know
Lawrence,
more.
I appreciate that, and we'll talk about your
Okay.
statement, but
Show me where in this statement it says that you killed your parents. It doesn't. It doesn't talk about the fate of your parents here. You keep talking about the statement answering my question, but the statement does not answer my question. It's the question people want to know. And I think they need to hear it from you.
Yes, there's a time for that.
And I think now's the time. Did you kill your parents to put them out of their misery?
My concern for their misery was paramount. It was a huge burden to have to face this coming up. This is a horrible situation.
Lorenz is directly admitting here that taking care of his parents, the way they took care of him his entirely functionally useless life, would be a huge burden. So he killed them. It wasn't that their quality of life would go down a little bit, or that they had lost any real sense of independence, but they were putting too much responsibility onto his shoulders, and he didn't like that. So this man is pretty pathetic. I don't know, what good are you if you can't be relied on? I mean, in a basic way. So how is this guy going to help the rest of the country when he can't even be bothered to help his parents? I mean, elephant in the room, right? Presumably, if you love those around you, taking care of them shouldn't be a burden. It can be hard and you'll probably not enjoy every aspect of it, but it isn't about you. It's about showing up for those you care for. If it's too hard for you, then you shouldn't expect to live with your parents well into your 40s and coast through life on the backs of other people's hard work. Moreover, when discussing his parents, he has no emotional reaction. There's no sense of remorse, no sadness they have passed. It's like he's discussing a movie that he saw the other day, not the murder of the two people who supported him his entire life.
Sure. So you alleviated that burden.
You're a good questioner. I have to protect my Fifth Amendment rights on this until the right time.
I'm not an attorney. I'm not an officer of the law. You don't have to say that to me.
Yes, but I mean, whatever I say here is going to be held against me elsewhere, right?
Of course, but you probably answer to a higher authority anyway in the long run. So I think you can tell us what happened. Did you kill your parents together at the same time in the same place? What method did you use?
All that kind of stuff I would answer later with that deal with the American people. But I'm not going to speak about such things like that.
But you have a chance to tell the American people right now.
I want their feedback on my statement. Then I can believe that I can tell the truth uninhibited.
You don't think you're going to get better feedback if you're honest with them? And tell us what happened?
I put things in the right order that have to be in the right order. But it's very important that insofar as exculpatory material, the police have that statement from my mother regarding what happened to her, crossing the street at Wolf Road, falling down, Right. And she also had a problem with, she mentioned she was getting lines in her eyes for some reason. And there was I don't know what that would be.
Notice that the note he's talking about is about her falling down, not her saying she wants to die. If he had evidence that his mother and father consented to their own deaths, that would be an entirely different issue. But all he has is a note saying she fell once, which is nothing. I have plenty of those, and you don't see my brother killing me over it. For now. Secondly, he states he wants the American people's notes on his statement before he decides if he wants to confess to the murder or not. He's itching to know if people are generally open to the idea of giving him prosecutorial immunity, as well as a position of power in the government, or if we are open to him paying some large fine for murdering his parents. Well, I think I can speak for everyone when I say no, Ben Franklin. We're not going to be doing anything like that here. So I don't think you get to pass new laws and consequences just because you feel like you're smarter than everybody else. You don't get overarching powers over the government because you were told you were brilliant once on a forum. So I don't think most people will agree with his assessment of any of these facts. We don't agree with his line of thinking and, frankly, pun intended, the callousness in which he sees people as dangerous.
That was the prelude that helped set things in motion, you're saying. That started your parents' downhill trend, health-wise.
Yes, but also the letter from her to me said, do something, or this you need to know this in a way that...
Your parents asked you to kill them or to take their lives in a merciful fashion?
I think they want me to take responsibility for things.
Hopefully the contents of this note becomes public, because what it sounds like is that she was asking for help. She wanted him to take responsibility for his own life, to earn a good living, and to help the family as they entered a new phase in their lives. She wasn't asking to be killed by her child. She wanted help with basic tasks, and he felt like that if he helped her once, he'd be stuck taking care of the two of them. So he decided to end their lives. God, this guy stinks.
They asked you to take their lives, to do what they couldn't do?
Implicitly, but not explicitly.
So you were just granting their wishes?
My mother, after my sister died, my mother would give me these do not resuscitate things every few months, and she wanted to die, given her grief for my sister, her daughter.
And you loved your parents and you wanted to honor their wishes?
There's something special about our family that we can somehow read each other's minds, and so being things explicit isn't necessarily I could complete my grandmother's sentences for her, and she would say, "Wow, So I mean, the context of all this became to bear on me.
Did one parent, did your mom or your dad more so than the other, ask you to take their lives?
They didn't explicitly say that, but they made it clear that they were going downhill.
Again, Lorenz feels like he is ever so brilliant. He states that his family could read each other's minds, which makes proving that his parents wanted to be murdered a bit tricky. His parents kept implying that they wanted to die by doing things like asking for help and getting old. They told him that they were struggling a bit more due to age, and he interpreted that as them begging for him to kill them. But there's no evidence of this. Most families or people who spend a significant amount of time together often feel like they know what each other are thinking most of the time. That is something that comes with a lot of quality time spent and a general understanding of each other. This is not some special thing about Lorenz and the Kraus family. It's just a basic friendship or community thing.
When it actually happened, when your parents died, did they know it was happening to them?
Oh, yeah.
And they knew it was at your hand?
Well, yes, no one else's.
Right. So they realized what you were doing to them as it happened.
Yes.
They knew that this was it for them, that they were perishing at your hand.
Yes. And it was so quick.
How did you do it?
Yeah, I can't talk about that.
Well, you've just told us that
Right.
it was at your hand.
Right.
Were there drugs involved?
No,
Was
no,
there
no.
a suffocation? You suffocated them? You suffocated your parents.
Yeah.
That was the best way to take their lives, through suffocation.
Basically.
Less than 10 minutes. It took Lorenz less than 10 minutes to fully confess to the murder of his parents, even though he said 2 minutes earlier he didn't want to say if he did it or not. He's a little shy guy. And he goes further to state that he suffocated them. So not only were they killed by their son, but he chose a method of killing that would take a significant amount of time and cause a great deal of suffering. But he thinks he did his duty. Great.
Which parent did you suffocate first?
My father, and after he died, my mother put her head on his chest, and she was there for a few hours, and then I finished her.
I would be interested to see if the autopsy matches what he just said, because the story doesn't make any sense. He killed his father, then allowed his mom to lay in bed with the dead body, then after a few hours killed her. This feels reminiscent of Tony Todd, the man who killed his entire family in Disney World's Celebration community. He created this elaborate story after the killings about his wife, and how she actually was behind the whole ordeal, and encouraged him to kill her afterwards, and said that she would forgive him. Their stories all emphasize the fact that they are such good people, who are just doing what their loved ones wanted, and therefore shouldn't be penalized. If his parents wanted to die, where's the evidence? Why didn't they write a note or take a video on his phone, saying they wanted him to end their lives for them, and then consent to it? Why didn't they simply end their own lives, instead of forcing their son to do it? So far, even his story is just that he knew telepathically that his parents just wanted to die. They told him without really telling him, and we should just all trust him when he says that. I mean, what are the chances that he would meet someone else and they would tell him they wanted to die with their minds? What are we even talking about?
And then what did you do? Did you bury them immediately?
No. I didn't know what to do after that. I was thinking what to do. It took me several days to realize I can't do this, I can't do that. Just bury them on the property, and it was wide open, sunlight. I remember my sister, she received either a gift of a lamb or a lamb was given to her upon her funeral, but that lamb showed up, and I put it on my mother's grave, and the police must have that now too.
You call it a grave? You bury them in the backyard, you see it as a grave?
Well, I bury them, and I put a thing around my mother's grave, and and I planted a peach tree next to her, and I put that there.
What did you think as you were doing it? As you were taking their lives? What was going through your head?
Not thoughts, action. Make sure it's done, and not fool around, not make a mistake. But, you know, I'm sure the police are going to say what an incompetent idiot I am on that. But, you know.
Why would the cops say that? From what he has said thus far, he did end their lives swiftly. Or as swiftly as suffocating someone can be, I guess. If he believes the cops are going to say he was an incompetent idiot for how he took their lives, that would mean that it took longer than he said, or that he attempted to dispose of their bodies in a different way originally. He's being direct, but he's not being honest.
Did they both pass away peacefully? Did they struggle as you did it?
I would say the last minute, no. But they're, you know, I think my father died very quickly, like, surprisingly quickly. That shocked me. And then, you know, the part with my mother, went quickly too.
So this may be just because he doesn't interact with real people often, but the way he phrased that is highly suspect. If both his parents died surprisingly quickly and hadn't really fought back, whatever that means, he wouldn't have separated them that way. This is an uncomfortable subject. He would be looking for the quickest, easiest answer he could give so they can move on to his stupid written statement. But he doesn't do that. He says that they didn't fight back for the last minute he was suffocating them, which means they had been fighting him before, and then separates the answer for how long it took to end their lives, but ultimately resolves to say the same thing. One of them did not go as quickly as the other, and from his answer, it seems like he struggled to kill his mother, but easily killed his father.
Did you realize what you were doing, as righteous as you may have thought it was illegal, and
Oh, yeah.
you knew you were breaking the law? You knew you were...
Well, that's what I'm saying. We have to squeeze the law to fit the humans, not us, the humans to fit the law. And we have 40 million boomers. They're all going to suffer a horrible death, typically. My mother always, if somebody died in their home, she would say, great, the person died with their boots on, instead of going to a hospital and going through a meat processing factory kind of thing. So they were both children of World War II. My mother was born in 42. She was a toddler. She told me she would follow funerals behind the horse and wagon. This is the kind of world she grew up in. My father was at age 12 in a communist concentration camp for 3 years. So they had very serious lives, given, you know, the globe, genocidal British geopolitics, as I call it. So they were not fooling around on things. They were serious people.
When you were doing this, did you think about the financial ramifications, the fact that you would continue to take their government money?
You know, once that happens, and what do? I mean, the government is pissed because I took the Social Security money and gave it to people who are starving in the Philippines. Okay, then, be angry about that. But the police know all the money that I have went to people to help them, thousands of dollars. I gave almost, not all of it away because there was still a lot left. But I gave away, I didn't play with the money, you know, I gave it away. I didn't enrich myself.
But he did enrich himself, because he used the money for himself. Sure, he gave some of it away, but he used the money to fund his own stupid life. He didn't have a job, he didn't make his own money. He just kept cashing their checks because he had a right to, I guess. Also, the government is not mad at him because he did so much charity work. That's a false statement that he's putting forth in order to feel like he's done nothing wrong. He committed fraud after murdering his family, which is clearly illegal. His entire argument is that, yes, he did kill his family. Yes, he broke multiple laws willfully. But he's such a special guy, with such special thoughts, he should be given a pass. That the laws should be bent and twisted around him, even though laws are generally guidelines to engage in society.
Does that justify what you did?
No, but this is not a kill for money case, is important to say. It's, I was helping people before that just fine. So it didn't, the issue of taking my parents' money for other purposes related to that doesn't fit. That's why the police, they had a theory going, which we talked about on Tuesday, and they wanted to try to say that this was taking their money to give away to other people, but it was that the other part is the primary situation.
Some would call that blood money.
Right, and I was giving it away.
But it's still blood money.
Well, if you kill to take somebody's money away, that's blood money. But if you know, what was I supposed to do with this money? Again, I couldn't tell anyone. The government needs to have an office where you can say, this is something that happened, and here's how it happens, and they need to deal with these kind of problems in an open way. Everything in this country is hidden away, and this is a societal crisis. Again, 40 million people are going to deal with this, and maybe a multiple of that given their friends and family. So I mean, it's a reality of human experience, and I just wanted to say, in 2020 there was this YouTube channel called Tribe of the Fox, and they did a video called The Mannerbunde. And they explain how in the ancient times they had men who would do this for the elderly so they wouldn't have to suffer. And of course the ancient Greeks always believed in dying on the battlefield rather than dying in a bag of bones. So, I mean, culturally, America is totally...
Yes, every year there are more and more elderly people who need specialized care. But them needing that care or being in a home does not mean they have no quality of life and do not deserve to die. Moreover, America is not culturally backwards, or whatever he was about to say there. He clearly has an affinity for history and ancient times. He brings it up constantly. He's of the belief that things were simply better back then, which is a common belief for a lot of people, but times always seem better than they are now because we only know our daily problems that we have. Hindsight is 20/20, right? But things are, objectively speaking, better now. The life expectancy of most people that he's talking about was way lower, with the flu and common cold just taking people out like the trash. Infant mortality was exceptionally low, and most women who gave birth faced complications that would lead to their deaths. Though our society does have issues, and there are always problems to be solved, killing the elderly the moment they cannot work or trip and fall is not a solution to anything. Call me crazy, but just saying, don't at me. Similarly, what the fuck does he mean that there should be a government office where you can go to and admit to killing your family members without punishment? What would that even look like? Everything this guy has said has been so stupid, yet he's so smug. And somehow he walks around with the confidence of somebody who's accomplished anything.
They didn't die on a battlefield, though. It sounds like they died in their beds with a pillow over their faces.
No, but you could put it that way.
I mean, it wasn't a battlefield.
Well, right, it's not, I mean, the preference of people, of the ancient Greeks, was to die on the battlefield rather than die so infirm that you have nothing.
Was it a pillow that you used?
No.
What did you use to suffocate them?
For my father, my hand, and for my mother, a rope.
So you strangled her?
Yeah, that would seem better.
It was strangulation, not suffocation?
Well, it's the same, no, denial of oxygen,
Okay.
but also blood circulation.
So you cut off the oxygen to both of them. That was your method?
Yeah.
Okay. Now that this has come to light and the police started investigating, and do you have any regrets?
I did the right thing for them based on the situation. I did my duty to them as a son, and that's everything fell into place. I don't know how it happened that it all fell into place, but it did. And so no, I don't have. It's a horrible situation to be in. One does one's duty, and one is done. The issue of regrets, I can't say this. It's a regrettable experience, a regrettable situation, and of course, life is horrible. It has horrible moments in life, but that's that.
I just want to make sure I have it correct, because I'm a journalist and facts are important. You used your a single hand to kill your father?
Right.
putting it over his nose and you choked him. Okay.
Lorenz chose one of the most brutal ways of killing his father. Choking someone to death is a highly intimate and aggressive act. You have to maintain prolonged pressure on the person's throat, enough to cut off oxygen, and you're looking in the person's eyes while you do it. Most people who strangle their victims report feelings of extreme rage towards them, and for Lorenz to kill his father that way is telling. We noted earlier that when he talked about where his parents were buried, he put a lot of time and attention to decorating and honoring his mother. Her grave had a lamb on it. He painted a peach tree in her honor, and seemed to take a lot of time to make sure her site was maintained. Similarly, he talked about how he read his mother's mind, and how she wrote him the note to say it was time for her to die, despite never actually saying that. Everything seemingly goes back to her, but never his father. For Lorenz to kill his father by strangling him with his bare hands tells us that he felt extreme anger towards him. He could have drugged him, shot him in his sleep, or picked a more painless method, but he chose to look the man who took care of him his entire life in the eyes as he choked him to death.
You did the same with your mother, but with a rope. You choked her with a
No,
rope.
no, just a rope.
Right, I'm sorry, but I meant you choked her with a rope, though, instead of your hand.
Right.
Okay. Are you on any medications today?
No. Well, no.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Is your mind clear and...
I'm just a little sleepy, but I'm trying to keep my eyes open, but that's okay.
Okay, but you have no mental disabilities that are affecting what you're saying here today?
Correct.
You're confident in what you said and clear of
Yeah.
mind as you say all this?
Yeah.
Okay.
I would appreciate. I hope that you could put this on YouTube, the whole thing.
I'm sure we'll put this on. And are you ready to face the consequences now with the police and the authorities?
Yes, but I would like the American people to also read my statement so that everybody can have something to appeal to on this. I know my statement is I'm not really concerned about the police or the courts or anything. There's something much bigger in life, and we have to deal with the big things in life.
Okay. But again, just to be certain, in 2017, you took your father's life.
Correct.
And then moments later, or a short time later, you took your mother's life on that same day.
Right. No, well, see, that's the thing. It was late at night, and it was like late evening on one day into early morning next.
So within hours of each other. What did you do between the taking of your father's life and the taking of your mother's life?
I'm trying to remember, because there was, yeah, I don't remember.
Did you sit with your mother? Were the three of you together in one
Well,
room?
before they died, my father was here, my mother was here, and I told them what happened to me and my sister after she died. And my sister died in the house too, because when she died from the cancer. But she died in May of 1988, and then in that fall I was doing my 11th grade now then, and there was I had to do a paper in a big test, so I did an overnighter to do that test, and then tried to do a second overnighter to finish that paper or something, and I crawled into bed at like 2:45 in the morning, and sometime then after I popped out of my body, and I started floating up to the ceiling. I saw the nooks and crannies, and I acknowledged that the nooks and crannies of the ceiling, and then the whole world disappeared, and I was in this big black void, and it was rushing by, and then I saw my sister in a doorway in profile. Anyhow, after that, so it was like a near-death experience kind of thing. And so I told my parents about that experience. And I told them, it's time, go find Rosa. My sister's name was Rosa. And so my father just died quickly, so quickly. And I told him, find Rosa. And that's that.
So that was nonsense, but at least he's content with what he said. And when you really think about it, that's all that really matters. Remember, if we make a board of trustees with this guy in charge, he'll give us $4,000 by the end of this.
And then again, just take me through, after your mother died, how long was it before you buried them? Approximately.
2 or 3 days, actually.
So your parents' deceased bodies were in your house with you for 2 or 3 days.
Right.
And then you decided you had to do something to cover up your crimes, or to properly bury them and send them on their way?
Right. I mean, I needed to, yeah, I mean, basically, I had to bury them.
Was the burial to cover up your crime? You didn't want to be found out.
Right, of course. I mean, what to do? So again, the thing to do just occurred to me. Oh, she can fit here and he can fit there, and then just do it. And it was done. And you know, that's that.
Have you lived with fear of being found out all these years?
I struggle to do other things with my life to try to make something great out of it. Because if that's what I know, that they would not want me to rot away to death in prison over this. And I have a duty to everyone to make the best out of my life, and in the end, do what's best for the people of Germany, really. I call it being a Volkssaver. It took me years to understand all this, but I learned a lot in the last eight years that I never knew before, and I learned, self-educated in so many ways. So I did not. The issue of being caught is. I was able to buy time to solve huge problems, and that's worth it in many ways.
But he didn't solve anything. In fact, he never did anything of consequence his entire fucking life besides killing his parents. He used his parents' money to help other people, but he didn't earn that. He won an award one time for an idea that could have helped people, but then didn't do anything. He never took steps to actually turn that into any reality. And he made the worst goddamn looking website I have seen in a long time to try and decentralize the banks. Did that actually happen though? No, because it's a website and not an actual solution. He believes he's so special because he has some vague idea of how to fix things, but so do most people. You don't get rewarded because you think you could find a cure for cancer, just maybe. You actually have to put in the effort to finding the cure. So he's done nothing with his life since his parents died. He's coasted off of his own mediocrity and the fact that no one ever took notice of him. He's unfortunately the exact opposite of exceptional, because had he even been slightly competent, someone would have noticed his crimes sooner.
To the American people, to me, and to them, to their legacy, to their,
Do you think people are going to accept this rationale
they probably won't.
and feel for you?
What they need to feel is for their own parents. They're going to face the same problems, and they're going to have to find solutions ahead of time, or else they're going to end up like me. That's the reality.
Are you telling other people that when their parents start ailing, they should take their lives?
They have a duty to their parents to bring them comfort at the end of life when they believe they need to.
So yes, if you feel like taking care of others is a burden, then you shouldn't be a 53-year-old with nothing to show for your life besides what your parents gave to you. You should, dare I say, be on your own, not relying on others, and forming your own path.
But again, just to be clear, you took both your parents' lives.
Yes.
And you realize that you're probably going to face the criminal consequences.
Oh, of course.
I mean, you're probably going to be arrested and
Well,
charged. And
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure they're gonna. It's a process. You have to go through the process. How it will come out at the end, I don't know. But to influence that process, I would beg the American people to read that statement.
all right.
Well, I did. Imagine if I came on here and said that I won a Little League Baseball MVP award once, and therefore I should be given control of all of baseball. That would be demented. But he thinks he did a pretty good job, so let's see how that works out for him.
Lawrence, thank you for being with us.
Oh, I appreciate it very much. Thank you.
The fact that they edited this together like this is so funny to me. Feels like a bit from The Office.
Thank you for seeing us again, Lawrence. Since you told me yesterday that you killed your parents, do you feel a sense of relief today about that?
Not any extra relief. No, not at all.
The world knows what happened now? That doesn't...
I mean, that does help. I think. I'm glad that people know about my statement.
And we are back to the statement. That's all he really cares about. He is of the belief that if enough people read the statement, they will want to put him in charge of the government. They will agree that killing the elderly is a reasonable solution to caring for family members, and let him off the hook for murder. That all seems reasonable to him, even though he is actively in prison looking like, again, Ben Franklin IRL. So here we are.
That's important to me.
But I think people out there care about your parents and what happened to them.
Yes.
Can we just go through that again very quickly? That night that you decided to take their lives, did you know that day, the day before, when did you know that was the time to do this?
My father laid back and was ready. He knew. I just want to say a message that there's a legal defense type of thing, and then there's a political defense. And the most important law in this country is New York State ratification law, which says that the people have the power to reassume the powers of government whensoever it is necessary to their happiness. And one of my goals was to create a board of trustees for New York State. And to create that initial trustee, someone needs to know what to do. So I'm making the claim that I'm the initial trustee of the New York State Board of Trustees, and they would have prosecutorial immunity. And so I appeal to that as having prosecutorial immunity.
Okay, so I'm gonna go commit a bunch of murders. Don't worry though, once I'm caught, I'm going to say I'm actually the king of the world, so I can't technically be prosecuted. I'll let you know how that works out. But in all seriousness, the fact that this man believes he can convince anyone of anything is ludicrous. Possibly even, dare I say, unconscionable. How you present yourself matters, and the fact remains that he cannot get his points across confidently. He is attempting to fight for his freedom. This is the most important thing to him in the world at this present moment. And he sounds so timid, like he's a mouse. He has no charisma, no energy, no pop, nothing.
For this case.
It's pretty much a certainty that's not going to happen. You also talked about wanting to be tried under German law.
Well, ancient German law, yes.
Is that still something you're looking for?
I would ask for it. There's nothing wrong with asking. I mean, you never know if you'll get a yes. You can get a yes. And this country is unstable right now. You don't know what could break up. I do think the country should break up into pieces to make it better for everyone. Even the Washington Post suggested that.
The court of public opinion seems to say that they're not happy with what they heard from you yesterday, that they think it was a cold-blooded crime. Do you understand people thinking that way?
I'm glad you gave me that feedback. We all are getting old. We're all going to need help, and we're all going to have to decide how to deal with these kinds of problems. And with 40 million boomers getting into that stage of life, they need their options open, and their families need their options open.
But who are you to decide, other than being their son? But is that decision up to you? Can you play God?
You can do your duty to your parents as they give you feedback, information, etc. And so it's really not a decision of God. It's it's a matter of what kind of lives are you trying to give your parents under grave circumstances that will be coming. If somebody falls and then ends up in the hospital, they're in like a machine that will just process them along, and you will have no way to recapture control, to get control of your own life again.
But they weren't in a hospital. They weren't hooked up to a machine.
Right.
Their lifeline was you, and you snuffed out their lives.
You have to understand that the end was coming, and the world starts to go. You have to decide when your time is up.
But the end is always coming for everyone. In fact, it's possible that I could die before this video comes out. It's possible that someone watching this just experienced a tragedy or learned that they have a terminal illness. That's life. We know one thing is true for all people, and that is, death comes for everyone. But that doesn't mean we have to bum rush death like it's the stage at a Metallica concert, am I right or am I right? and it certainly doesn't mean that the elderly deserve to be killed once they require a bit more care.
Did they decide or did you decide?
They were giving me hints to this effect.
And a hint's enough to go and decide to take a life?
It was information like a plea that this is the beginning of the end for them.
Well, it was the end for them because you made it the end for them.
Okay, I'll have to keep, I think, but I want to make sure.
What can you tell us about your parents? What kind of people were they, your mother and your father?
My father was more, well, my mother said, do whatever you want as long as you do good in school. And so I sort of measured myself as, is what I'm doing good for school or not? And usually that kept me on track to being, doing good in school. And my father was not so much important. Sometimes he would say, oh, you don't have to take that test.
This answer is telling because it shows how Lorenz saw his parents. The only thing he can remember about them is small things that they said to him when he was a child. He doesn't talk about how his dad liked to fish or that his mom was overbearing. There's no real mention of what these two people were like, which is a shame because they deserve to have their memory honored. He only engages with them in terms of how they affected him.
Were you not as close with your father?
I was close with them in different ways. But I wouldn't say that I was not as close with my father. I always felt closer to my father, I think.
Why did you decide to kill your father first?
Yeah, I can't talk about that. I'll listen to that advice of the lawyer.
After you took their lives, it's been 8 years. What have you been doing in those 8 years?
Trying to make good on their lives by trying to, I tried to start a Vogue Saver philosophy, which never existed before. And I think it's very important to civilization to try to start a new civilization, to recultivate the German people, because after World War II, they were totally wiped out culturally by the United States. Everything was destroyed, and then they were basically Americanized. But I understood that the essence of German culture is Vogue teleology, which is a philosophical term.
Don't you think your parents might have rather continued to live as opposed to you helping German culture?
My parents always believed in doing their duty. My mother always said, I do this out of duty to you. It's not as concerned with love and life as you might think it is.
Was it a loving relationship you had with your parents?
Not in a loving, I wouldn't characterize it as loving the way you might say it in America. It was harsh.
It was harsh.
Oh yeah, as a kid, it was very harsh.
So was any of the decision to take their lives in retribution for that?
No.
That the fact that you had a harsh upbringing?
No.
We're done.
Okay. Sorry.
Go ahead.
Sorry.
You're done.
All right, thank you.
Scott's face here is very funny, but I believe it was in retribution. Let's say that he's right. He felt like he had a duty to his parents to end their lives humanely. They were getting too old, they wanted to die, and they had given him little hints about wanting to be murdered. Why would you then choose to strangle your father with your bare hands? Why would you choose the most intimate, aggressive form of murder, instead of drugging them or shooting them when they were asleep? He wanted to kill them, and he wanted them to suffer. And he thought he could get away with it by writing some nonsensical speech about why he should be in charge of everything, and it's just nonsense, it's just noise. As of today, the case is still ongoing, with Kraus pleading not guilty to all 7 charges, including 2 counts of second-degree murder and 1 count of first-degree murder. He seems to believe that despite his televised confession, he'll be able to show that what he did was actually perfectly reasonable, and the proper solution to anyone having to take care of their elderly relatives. At the same time, his attorney filed a psychiatric defense notice. This notice is a form of defense attorneys submit if they want to introduce psychiatric evidence or argue for their client's diminished responsibility for an alleged crime because of mental disease or defect. But while that was occurring, Kraus had written a letter to the Times-Union, apologizing to the people of Albany, and writing in detail about why, if he is found guilty, he should be beaten with a belt. Sure, the full contents of the letter have not been made public. And that is where the case stands now. Kraus is an absurdly disgusting person, and thankfully, he'll likely be spending the rest of his days in prison. With that said, let us know what you thought of the case in the comments down below. As always, if there is a case you would like us to cover or a story you want to bring more attention to, let me know by emailing me at dreading.official@gmail.com. Have a great day, and remember, stay safe.